Hello, everyone, and welcome into CrushTheStreet.com. We got a returning guest today. He is Michael Rivero, the one and only Michael Rivero from the popular website, WhatReallyHappened.com. And he hosts the popular radio show, What Really Happened. And I want to talk today to him about the ongoing Clinton scandal. Michael, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me again.
Michael, I'm looking at here the Clinton Foundation, just so much fraud. You know, number one, only 10% of the funds actually goes towards charity. And, they're the recipient, the Clintons are the recipients of hundreds of millions of dollars in speaking fees, and much of which actually came when Hillary was appointed to be the most powerful diplomat in the entire world. And here they are taking the morally high platform, supposedly. And behind the scenes, they're helping out their donor friends, completely flipping on their core beliefs. And my question to you is, how come more people are not aware of this?
Well, you're dealing with an enterprise, if you'll call it that. Actually, it's a syndicate that reaches far beyond the Clintons themselves. And in order to give you an overview, you need to go back all the way to the 1980s. To this illegal CIA operation that was arming the Contras in Nicaragua, and they were smuggling guns without serial numbers down there, and they were funding it all with cocaine that was brought back along the same smuggling pipeline. All of this was illegal. Intervening in Nicaragua was a violation of the Boland Amendment. Foreign policy carried out without the State Department and the President is a violation of the Logan Act. And, of course, bringing tons of cocaine into the United States for sale violates all kinds of state and federal drug laws. But this was all basically being shepherded by the Central Intelligence Agency. The northern end of this gun and drug-running pipeline was located in Arkansas under then-Governor Bill Clinton. And it was being run by then Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush, and everybody along this whole pipeline who was helping with the smuggling or the money laundering or the building of the weapons, they all became incredibly rich. And following the shoot down of Eugene Hassenfuss's plane over Nicaragua, this scandal exploded into public view as Iran Contra. And when Congress had to hold hearings, they were talking about the gun running, but they kept the government-sanctioned cocaine smuggling hidden from the American people. But this created a whole new power elite inside our government. And to understand how that worked, you need to go back and look at what happened to the nation during Prohibition, when alcohol was banned in the country, and it allowed those who were trafficking in illicit alcohol to obtain enough wealth to literally buy their way to the highest levels of the government. That's where the Kennedy fortune began. Old Joe Kennedy was a rum runner and a bootlegger, and his sons got into politics. John F. Kennedy became president. Robert Kennedy was on his way to being president when he was shot. And Ted Kennedy probably would have run for the White House had it not been for Chappaquiddick. But we're seeing a repeat of that. Instead of alcohol today, it's cocaine and heroin. And all of these people tangled up with this CIA drug-running operation are in a position to blackmail the entire government with it. And they have amassed this huge fortune, and they continue to the present day. We basically are in a government that's being run by a drug crime syndicate, and they may be great drug criminals, but they're very lousy administrators, which is one of the reasons why the country has deteriorated so much. And if you look at our foreign policy around the world, it's almost like, the mafia going on out saying, if you don't do what we tell you to do, something bad going to happen to you. We're going to get a drone strike. We're going to get a regime change. We're going to do all this stuff. And really, that's at the heart of what is going on. Now, the Clinton Foundation is a gigantic slush fund. Charles Ortiz over at Wall Street was taking a good look at it. He says, as near as he can determine, only 6% of the money that has gone into the Clinton Foundation was spent on charitable activities, usually in front of the media cameras to push this whole image. But in order to be a legal nonprofit foundation, they have to be spending 51% of their donations on charitable activity, and the Clintons definitely aren't. Ortiz is saying basically going on the publicly available records, literally billions of dollars have vanished into the Clinton Foundation without a trace. Nobody knows where the money went. It's probably resurfacing as funding for various Hillary political action committees, like the new one they've got out there called Correct the Record, which is their online cyber warrior force that's attacking Trump supporters, attacking critics of Hillary Clinton. It's being run by the guy who smeared and destroyed Anita Hill in order to make Clarence Thomas a Supreme Court judge. So it's all dirty, and it's all tied up with drug money. And I'll give you another example of that.
Yeah.
As you know, not to...
I was just going to say, I want to ask you, more about how the drug money is tied in and who's involved with this drug money. But yeah,
well, that's what that whole Whitewater situation was the money laundering for the CIA operation. Went through various banks like Morgan Guarantee, the Arkansas Development Finance Authority, which was designed by Webb Hubbell and signed into law by Bill Clinton. That was basically the laundry. How the money came on in was sanitized and then used to fund the construction of these illegal weapons, as well as enrich everybody who was taking part in the whole process. But to bring it a little bit more up to date, not too long ago we had this bizarre spectacle of FBI Director James Comey literally admitting that Hillary Clinton had committed felony violations of Title 18 and then said, we're not going to recommend charges because we don't know that she intended to do wrong. Well, if you've actually read Title 18, in particular Section 793, intent is not required. If you expose national security secrets through carelessness and negligence, it's still a violation. And Comey came on out and said Hillary was being careless and negligent and reckless, but he gave her a clean pass. Now, the reason for that strange behavior goes back to a drug money laundering scandal involving the bank HSBC. They got caught laundering money for drug criminals. It was a big stink. They were looking at major legal problems here in the United States of America. But HSBC got this sweetheart deal from the U.S. Attorney for New York for what was called a deferred prosecution. In other words, they had charges. They were ready to go to court, but they're simply not going to put the case on the docket to ever actually be tried in exchange for a settlement from HSBC that amounted to maybe 5 weeks of their profits. It was a wrist slap. Now, the U.S. Attorney for New York who gave HSBC that sweetheart deal was Loretta Lynch, who has since been promoted to Attorney General of the United States. When HSBC was involved in this drug money laundering, one of the members of their board was James Comey, who is now the head of the FBI. And that's where you begin to see the secret heart of all of this corruption is the drug smuggling and the drug money laundering. And it's completely corrupted our society the way the gangsters were able to corrupt our society during Prohibition.
Michael, I want to continue in this vein here and talk more about, the protection that this criminal has, from all sides. And, we know that she's obtained the support of the media. And, we know that for whatever reason, the media aligns themselves with her. And even CNN anchor admitted just not too long ago, it went viral, that they are the biggest promoters of her campaign. And
because the donors are giving her money thinking she's going to run, that means they're not going to have available money for other candidates if she doesn't. And I don't think she's going to give it to them.
She's on her way to deciding.
We'll see.
About deciding.
We couldn't help her any more than we have.
I know.
You know what I mean? She's got just a free ride so far from the media. We're the biggest ones promoting her campaign.
Is this tied to this drug money that you're talking about?
Well, indirectly, yes, because these people who are making these millions of dollars on the drug smuggling and the money laundering, after the money is laundered, they invest it in legitimate businesses, including the corporate media. And so if you're the owner of the media and you tell them you're going to be supporting Hillary Clinton, the prostitutes and the correspondents are going to do the job that they've been told to do. And that's what I mean about how this corruption spreads through the whole society, because ultimately, even people who are not themselves involved in the illicit drug trade or the laundering of money come under the influence of those who are, simply by the fact that they've got the money to buy up the media, buy up the TV stations, the newspapers, and the radios, and start issuing orders. And what we've seen arise out of that Iran Contra scandal was this ruling duopoly, the Clintons and the Bushes. and their ideal goal is to simply treat the White House like it's a dynastic inheritance to be passed off from Clinton to Bush to Bush to Clinton to, and so forth and so on. And they're already grooming Chelsea for a run at the White House, down the road here. Now, Obama managed to get in on the inside, but he has been part of the inside establishment all along, and he wasn't going to rock the boat. Donald Trump is truly an outsider. He's a businessman. He wasn't raised in that world of CIA clandestine operations and wet work and smuggling and so forth. When he gets into the White House and he realizes that the biggest drug smuggler in the country is the country, we're going to see a real war on drugs that goes after the drug smugglers, the dealers, and the money launderers, rather than these token arrests of end users that we see on the media to reassure us that our government really is being tough on drugs, even though demonstrably they are not.
So do you think that as president, she'll be in a stronger place to pull strings and do favors for her donors than she, is or has been in the past?
No question about it. And everybody who's looking at that Clinton Foundation, they need to understand all that money that went into that foundation is in expectation of promises to be kept when Hillary's in the White House. And so we have this lady who's aiming for the White House in order to repay all those favors, and that's going to be her top priority. She's not going to be thinking about ordinary Americans. She's got obligations and debts to keep to all the donors. And there's another factor you need to keep in mind. Everybody who paid her a bribe through that foundation, they are now in a position to control Hillary Clinton. She's wide open to blackmail. To everybody who did a pay-for-play for the State Department, to anybody who got hold of emails that reveal even more crimes. I mean, there's a question that I keep asking on my website and my show, and it's such a dangerous question. Nobody will touch it in the corporate media, not even to try and ridicule the idea. And that has to go back to another Clinton scandal from 1996 called Chinagate. And Chinagate was a scandal in which President Bill Clinton authorized the sale to China of highly sensitive U.S. technology over the objection of the State Department and the Pentagon and the intelligence agencies. And while this technology was being sold to China, Chinese money was flowing into his re-election campaign. Now, it was funneled through Chinese American citizens to make it legal, but when the scandal broke, it basically came out this money was coming from Chinese billionaires, Chinese intelligence agencies. Bill Clinton was literally selling U.S. secret technology to China in exchange for campaign donations. And so it is reasonable to ask if Hillary Clinton wasn't repeating that with this weak email server of hers, on which were parked many of the nation's top secrets. It's been confirmed she had special access program material on that server, which had weaker security than Ashley Madison. When the hacker from Romania, Guccifer, hacked into her email server, he reported seeing at least 10 foreign IPs logged in at the same time going through the documents there. So Hillary has this absolutely perfect espionage setup. She doesn't need to physically steal files the way Jonathan Pollard did. She doesn't need to leave chalk marks on mailboxes the way Aldrich Ames did. She didn't need to tape documents underneath the bridge at a park the way Robert Hansen did. The secrets are delivered through this email server, and she's got this foundation to collect and launder the payments. And 40% of the money that has come into the Clinton Foundation came from foreign sources. It's an absolutely perfect espionage setup.
Wow. Well, when it comes to the facts that you point out, you can't argue with that. But the problem is people don't know these. They don't understand it. They don't know it. And it just seems like if Hillary Clinton doesn't acknowledge it, most people will never find out. And I think she knows that because most people don't bother to dig into the lies that the government rams down the...
Well, that was true. That was true 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Certainly it was true during the height of the Cold War of the 1950s and 1960s. But right now we're seeing a tremendous change in the American public. Yeah. The advent of the Internet and the independent media has profoundly changed the way information flows through our society. And the American people have become aware of so many lies to date. They don't know them all. They don't know the sheer scale of the lies, but they know enough of them where they become very skeptical, and that's a good thing. As of the last poll that was conducted, only 6% of the American people have any trust for what they hear on the corporate media. And especially, as you pointed out, that CNN video went viral where they're out there just saying, yeah, we're here to push Hillary Clinton on you. Yeah. We're not here to report the news and be fair and balanced. We're here to sell you Hillary Clinton.
You know, I gave a short 7-minute speech a couple of weeks ago, just sharing some of the blatant lies of 9/11 to a general audience and just letting people know that the narrative does not add up. You know, things like Tower 7 falling, just some of the basic things, missing plane debris, no evidence of a 757 actually hitting the Pentagon. And, you know, where were the engines? Where was the footage of the Pentagon, the plane hitting it? And people were shocked. And, you know, people were shocked that the media, and they had to almost, you know, swallow this pill that, you know, they had to, you know, give up their patriotism for the country. And it's tough for people. It's almost like if you were religious your whole life, now you don't believe in a God. That's a tough thing to do for someone.
You're actually very close to what's going on. You're very close to what's going on, because the reason any tyrant in history gets away with this kind of stuff is because they grab the kids when they're too young to know that the big people are full of nonsense and lies and deception, and they indoctrinate you with certain beliefs. There's an imaginary playmate up in the sky who loves you. The media is honest. The government is only concerned for your well-being. And as you grow older, your personality forms around those core beliefs. They become part of your identity. And that's why when people are confronted with a reality that is in contrast with those beliefs, they'll psychologically react as if it's a personal attack. And that's one of the reasons you have to tread very, very carefully when you are trying to lead people into the truth. And you can't overwhelm them. You can't trigger that defensive reflex of, oh, you're attacking me personally because I believe our government is good. And part of the fine art of being a rabble-rouser is knowing what the rabble is ready to hear and knowing what they're not ready to hear, and never, ever, ever stepping across that line.
Right.
So it is an issue, and there are going to be disagreements. I disagree with you about the Pentagon and that plane and everything, but we don't need to go into that right now. But yeah, when you have spent your entire life in this matrix of lies, waking up to that reality, it can be disorienting. It can be a shock. It can literally provoke an identity crisis. You're not even sure who you really are anymore, because all the benchmarks that you defined your identity by have now been moved.
Yeah, no, and it's true, and that's what's tough, is that it's hard to have these conversations with people. But if people don't understand these things and they move forward in ignorance, you know, we have things like, you know, the Clintons, you know, get into power and manipulate things. Fraud is rampant, and, you know, quite frankly, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. When it's all said and done, it's about people's standard of living, quality of life. And, you know, with that, Michael, you know, I'd like to just get your closing thoughts here on the interview, and just, you know, your advice for people who are listening to this content and maybe hearing some of this stuff for the first time.
Well, we currently have an internet and an independent media, although Hillary has now come on out and basically said that if she manages to win or steal the White House, she's going to shut down the independent media completely, because she's getting sick and tired of constantly being accused of all the bad things she's actually done. She wants to erase all of her past scandals and focus totally on the new scandals that will attend her presidency. So we all have to be part of the independent media. Everybody listening to this interview, you are now part of the independent media, and that means you go on out, you take a look at the facts for yourself, you remember the big lies everybody understands, like Saddam's nuclear weapons. And that's always the way you open up a discussion with somebody. Remember how they lied about Saddam's nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. And once you've got them saying, yeah, we were lied to pretty badly about that, do you really think it's the only lie you've ever been told by the government? And that is the transition point there, because most people, when somebody in government is caught lying, they figure it's an anomaly, it's a scandal, it's a unique event. No, it isn't. Lying to the people to get what they want is business as usual, and they do it constantly. And in fact, I think most politicians are afraid to ever tell the truth about anything, because they're worried we might learn how to tell the difference, and then they'd actually have to quit politics and go find an honest job.
Well, there you have it, everyone. Michael Rivero, of whatreallyhappened.com. Michael, thanks for joining us here at crushthestreet.com.
Thank you for having me again.
Charity. And, they're the recipient, the Clintons are the recipients of hundreds of millions of dollars in speaking fees, and much of which actually came when Hillary was appointed to be the most powerful diplomat in the entire world. And here they are taking the morally high platform, supposedly. And behind the scenes, they're helping out their donor friends, completely flipping on their core beliefs. And my question to you is, how come more people are not aware of this?
Well, you're dealing with an enterprise, if you'll call it that. Actually, it's a syndicate that reaches far beyond the Clintons themselves. And in order to give you an overview, you need to go back all the way to the 1980s to this illegal CIA operation that was arming the Contras in Nicaragua, and they were smuggling guns without serial numbers down there, and they were funding it all with cocaine that was brought back along the same smuggling pipeline. All of this was illegal. Intervening in Nicaragua was a violation of the Boland Amendment. Foreign policy carried out without the State Department and the President is a violation of the Logan Act, and of course bringing tons of cocaine.
Hello everyone, and welcome in to crushthestreet.com. We got a returning guest today. He is Michael Rivero, the one and only Michael Rivero from the popular website whatreallyhappened.com, and he hosts the popular radio show What Really Happened, and I want to talk today to him about the ongoing Clinton scandal. Michael, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me again.
Michael, I'm looking at here the Clinton Foundation, just so much fraud. Number one, only 10% of the funds actually goes towards
into the United States for sale, violates all kinds of state and federal drug laws. But this was all basically being shepherded by the Central Intelligence Agency. The northern end of this gun and drug running pipeline was located in Arkansas under then Governor Bill Clinton, and it was being run by then Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush, and everybody along this whole pipeline who was helping with the smuggling or the money laundering or the building of the weapons, they all became incredibly rich. And following the shoot-down of Eugene Hassenfuss's plane over Nicaragua, this scandal exploded into public view as Iran Contra. And when Congress had to hold hearings, they were talking about the gun running, but they kept the government-sanctioned cocaine smuggling hidden from the American people. But this created a whole new power elite inside our government. And to understand how that worked, you need to go back and look at what happened to the nation during Prohibition, when alcohol was banned in the country, and it allowed those who were trafficking in illicit alcohol to obtain enough wealth to literally buy their way to the highest levels of the government. That's where the Kennedy fortune began. Old Joe